Doctor Doom 2017. Back when Fox was scrambling to expand its Marvel universe beyond just the X-Men, one of their boldest ideas was giving a full solo movie to one of Marvel's most iconic villains, Doctor Doom. In 2017, Noah Hawley, best known for Fargo and Legion, was officially developing a Doom film that was nothing like your typical superhero movie. This wasn't going to be explosions and CGI armies. Hawley envisioned it as a grounded geopolitical thriller set during a Cold War-like tension, with Victor Von Doom ruling Latveria as both a feared dictator and a complex anti-hero. Casting talks never fully materialized, but names like Mads Mikkelsen were floated, a perfect fit for Doom's cold, calculating presence. What made this project interesting is that it could have redefined Doom completely. Instead of a one-note villain like in Fantastic Four, this version aimed to explore his intelligence, political power, and moral ambiguity, something closer to the comics. But none of it mattered in the end, as Disney began its massive acquisition of 20th Century Fox in late 2017. Fox quietly stopped pushing new Marvel projects. By the time the deal was finalized in 2019, the Doom movie was effectively dead. And just like that, one of the most unique Marvel films ever pitched never even got the chance to exist. Captain America: Serpent Society. Before Civil War became one of Marvel's biggest crossover events, it almost went in a completely different direction, one that most fans barely even know existed. During development, Marvel wasn't even sure if Robert Downey Jr. would return as Iron Man, and without him, the entire Civil War storyline falls apart. So Marvel built multiple backup versions of the third Captain America film, and one of them was Captain America: Serpent Society. They even revealed that title publicly in 2014, only to pull a bait-and-switch minutes later and announce Captain America: Civil War instead. But here's the thing, Serpent Society wasn't just a joke. It was real. Early concepts leaned into a grounded political thriller, closer in tone to The Winter Soldier. Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson would be hunting for Bucky, only to uncover a massive conspiracy tied to a shadowy elite group known as the Round Table. Their goal: manufacture global chaos using advanced weapons, destabilize governments, and quietly take control. In a twist, the film would have forced uneasy alliances, even working alongside Helmut Zemo and the version of Captain America gone wrong, Bill Burnside. There were even alternate titles like The Raging Nation and Our Country Divided, all pointing to a more focused, espionage-heavy story without Iron Man. But once Downey signed on, everything changed. Marvel pivoted hard into Civil War, and this darker, more grounded Captain America story was left behind. Hawkeye solo movie 2010. For all the original Avengers that defined the MCU, one name always stood out for what it didn't get: Hawkeye. Played by Jeremy Renner, Clint Barton was there from Avengers to Endgame, but never got a solo film. And that wasn't always the plan. Back in the early 2000s, Marvel actually considered a Hawkeye movie as a potential closer for Phase 2. The idea leaned into a grounded origin story, stripping away the alien invasions and focusing on Clint as a human weapon shaped by S.H.I.E.L.D. This version would have introduced a lesser-known villain, Griffin, with rumors pointing to Mark Wahlberg being eyed for the role. The tone reportedly aimed to feel more like a spy thriller than a superhero spectacle, something closer to the Bourne Identity than Thor. It also would have explored Clint's past in a deeper way, something the films only ever hinted at. So why didn't it happen? Unlike other cancelled Marvel projects, this one didn't die because of rights issues or studio drama. It simply never found its footing. Marvel couldn't lock in a clear creative direction, and Hawkeye as a character was always treated more as a supporting player than a box office lead. By the time the MCU shifted into Phase 3's massive crossover storytelling, the window for a solo Hawkeye film had already closed, eventually replaced years later by the Disney Plus series Hawkeye. War Machine 2011. Right after Iron Man 2, Marvel quietly explored giving War Machine his own solo movie, something that could have finally pushed Rhodey out of Tony Stark's shadow. Played by Don Cheadle, this version of James Rhodes was set up for a much more serious, grounded story. The early concept picked up directly after Iron Man 2, with Rhodey going rogue, defying military orders to carry out a high-risk mission he believed was morally right, even if it meant becoming a fugitive. Think less superhero spectacle, more military political thriller. It would have explored the consequences of weaponized armor in government hands, and what happens when a soldier decides to stop following orders. But like many early MCU ideas, it never moved beyond development. At the time, Marvel was still figuring out which characters could carry solo films, and War Machine, despite being a fan favorite, was seen as too closely tied to Iron Man to stand on its own. As the MCU expanded, priorities shifted toward bigger crossover setups, and Rhodey remained in a supporting role. Years later, Marvel attempted to revive the concept through Armor Wars, again with Cheadle leading, but with constant delays and uncertainty around its format. format, even that project now feels like it's stuck in limbo. So for now, War Machine remains one of the MCU's biggest what-ifs. Nick Fury, 2000. Before the MCU even existed, Marvel was already trying to crack a Nick Fury movie, just not the version we know today. In the mid-2000s, a standalone film inspired by Jim Steranko's legendary Nick Fury was in development. This wasn't the modern-day super spy we're used to. The story was set during World War II, leaning into a pulp espionage-heavy tone with Fury operating behind enemy lines. Marvel even brought in Andrew W. Marlowe, known for Air Force One, to write the script. Early details were scarce, but it reportedly included classic S.H.I.E.L.D. elements like the helicarrier and high-tech espionage, blending war drama with sci-fi. But then everything changed in 2008. When Iron Man introduced Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury in its post-credits scene, Marvel suddenly had a new direction. Fury wasn't a World War II soldier anymore. He was the glue of a modern shared universe. Marlowe even suggested reworking the script to fit Jackson's version, shifting the timeline to present day. But by that point, Marvel had bigger plans. Instead of a solo film, Fury became a supporting cornerstone of the MCU. And just like that, this original war-era Nick Fury movie quietly disappeared, replaced by something much bigger. The Hands of Shang-Chi, 2005. Long before Marvel finally nailed Shang-Chi in 2021, there was an earlier attempt that could have looked completely different and way more grounded. Originally titled The Hands of Shang-Chi, the project dates back to the early 2000s, with Stephen Norrington attached as director in 2001. The vision was clear from the start. This wouldn't be a typical superhero movie with martial arts sprinkled in. It would be a full-on martial arts film at its core. By 2005, the project evolved with Yuen Woo-ping stepping in to direct, alongside a script from Bruce C. McKenna. At one point, the film was even being developed under DreamWorks, with talks of an R-rated tone, something unheard of for Marvel at the time. But that ambition became its biggest problem. Producer Avi Arad pushed for a safer PG-13 rating, creating a clash in creative direction. The project kept shifting, never fully locking in its identity, and without a clear path forward, funding became an issue. Eventually, the film was quietly shelved. It would take over 15 years before Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings finally brought the character to life. But this earlier version, it could have been Marvel's first true martial arts epic long before the MCU even existed. Namor the Submariner, 1990. Long before Namor showed up in the MCU, Marvel spent over a decade trying and failing to get him on the big screen. It started in the late 90s when Philip Kaufman was in talks with early Marvel Studios to develop a Namor movie. That version never moved forward, but the project kept resurfacing. By the early 2000s, David Self was hired under Universal Pictures with plans to film in 2003 and release in 2004. It sounded like momentum was finally building, until it wasn't. Directors came and went, including Chris Columbus, who briefly boarded the project with a planned 2007 release before exiting in 2005. After that, the film just stalled. No clear direction, no stable creative team, and eventually, no movie. But the real reason Namor kept sinking came down to rights issues. Much like the Hulk, Universal held distribution rights to Namor. That meant Marvel could make the movie, but Universal had to release it, a setup that complicated everything. And here's the key part: as long as a solo Namor film was being developed or released, those rights stayed locked. So when the MCU started taking off, Marvel made a strategic decision: stop pushing a Namor solo film altogether. Let the rights situation expire. By 2014, that gamble paid off. Marvel regained control, but instead of rushing a solo project, they held Namor back until Black Panther finally introduced him. After decades of failed attempts, Namor didn't just arrive, he waited for the perfect moment. She-Hulk, 1990. Long before the MCU turned She-Hulk into a Disney Plus series, Marvel actually tried to bring her to life way back in the early 1990s, and it got further than most people realize. At the time, Larry Cohen was attached to write and direct the She-Hulk movie, with actress Brigitte Nielsen, known for Rocky IV and Beverly Hills Cop 2, set to play Jennifer Walters. And this wasn't just early talks. The project was already in development, with test photos showing Nielsen both as Walters and a toned-down, less green version of She-Hulk. That alone tells you how different this version would have been. This was pre-CGI. So instead of the fully transformed Hulk-like look we know today, the film likely would have leaned into practical effects, closer to body paint and prosthetics than a full visual transformation. In other words, a much more grounded take on the character. As for the story, that's where things get vague. Very little is known about the plot, and even the reason for cancellation remains unclear. Like many Marvel projects of that era, it likely fell apart due to budget limitations and the difficulty of adapting such a visually demanding character at the time. Decades later, Tatiana Maslany would finally bring the character to life in She-Hulk Attorney at Law, proving that some Marvel ideas just needed the right technology and the right timing. That's 10 minutes.
Thank you for watching. Like the video and don't forget to subscribe for more flops.